Hello everybody and welcome to another old Irix software tutorials. Today we're going to be looking at Lightwave. Lightwave has always been split into two different programs. They have a modeler and a layout. And the modeler, of course, is self-explanatory. You load up the modeler app and you get this for Windows, this little view here, top, face and left. It's probably hard to see my mouse. They have a small mouse pointer, so it might be confusing where I am, but you can see it over here in the black a little bit. Lightwave was really basic back in the beginning, and even here in our 5.6 flavor that we're going to be looking at today, it is there's not a lot to it, so it should be a fast tutorial to kind of give you the rundown of the program. The first thing we'll do is we'll just go here through Modeler, and so there's just real basic things going on here. So we have our perspective view over here on the upper right, your top view on the upper left, face view, which is like the front, lower left, and the left view, which is on the lower right. You have a few tabs up here and some buttons depending on the tabs that you're in. And then down here on the left, there's this little thing that gives you a readout of your position and your grid size, and then there's points, polygons, and volume. We're mainly going to use points and polygons for modeling. Over on the lower right, there's cut, copy, paste, redo, and undo. Not a lot of stuff going on. Up here in the upper right, there's a layout button which will open up the other application for animation and rendering. And then there's some layers here. There's some limitations to this because of the version that we're in. Let's go over this. So there's not a lot here. So we got objects is one tab, which you have file, so you can load and save objects. You have some preferences and stuff for your layout, but then you got create, box, ball, disc, cone, sketch, text, and pen. Some very basic shapes to work with here. And then these are grayed out until you turn something on. There's modify, which is like, move, rotate, size, stretch, drag, shear, twist, taper, bend, magnet, vortex, pull. I'm not going to get into a lot of this today. You can see there's just some generic tools. Multiply, which is extruding faces, lathe, there's like circular lathing, there's mirroring, we're going to use knife for cutting and adding spans. Here's the polygon creation. We'll do a little bit of this. I can show you some tricks that are modern tricks. We're going to try to do some subdivision modeling, and make it work in this old version of Lightwave Modeler. Tools, there's some tools, there's drill, solid drill, these are like your booleans, and then there's some point, we're going to use a point well, there's some curves we're not going to use, and then there's some display options here that show you, mainly for getting around in the software. Okay, so first thing we're going to do is we're just going to create, I'm going to create a real basic scene like I create in all my other tutorials. So just like a flat floor with, 3 basic shapes, and an area light, so we can do some soft shadows and try to make it a little pretty render. And that's what we're going to try to just do that today to cover how you get through Modeler and how things work in Layout. So to start, we'll go back to our Objects tab, and we'll go down here and we'll say, let's create a ball. This is like the sphere. You can go over here, when you have it, you can see the little ball icons created here. You can go over here and you start drawing a shape out, and you have like this circle comes, and there's a little flat thing that shows up. Move this guy over here to the center, and then there's this, and this is like flat, so this is like a profile, and then you can pull this up here and start making the other shape. Now the problem is this Lightwave, and this happened back in the early days of Lightwave, is that if you actually create a spherical looking shape here, so it looks like a sphere, you see you got this like perspective problem. So if I make it look spherical here, it looks flat there. If I make it look spherical here, it looks flat here, and that's a draw error. And so what you end up doing is you end up using this numeric option here. So you get a ball, and that's turned on. You can press this numeric thing. You've got global tessellation options here. I'm going to make 24 and 16 sides, and then here we'll make the center just dead 0, so 0 tab, 0 tab, 0 tab. But then the radius, I'll just put this for 1 all the way across, 1 by 1 by 1. And there it is. So you can see this is actually supposed to be a sphere. It looks like an oval, but it isn't. Now you haven't created anything yet because it's just showing you this is how the tools worked in Lightwave back then. You have this shape, but it's not made. It's just kind of giving you a preview. When you press the Make button here, it will create it. And then here's your sphere. So in here you can rotate around, and at this early phase of Modeler, we'll turn the ball tool off. At this early phase of Modeler, you can't really navigate with this other than rotation. You can't really zoom in into this here without also zooming into these. You can't control your pan and your zoom in this view. You can't select polygons in it, you can't select verts in it, so this makes it really tricky, and reminds us of how difficult things were back in the beginning of the industry. Let's see here. So if we want to see this a little better, we're going to have to zoom it, and we can go over here to display, and there's some quick keys, but there's a zoom, and I'll do this little thing here and draw this out. I'll draw that out here. It's zooming it in. I can draw it from the center, so right, zoom to that. Okay. Also, you can do a magnify, which is basically an in and out magnifying glass. It zooms into the area where you press, so if you put it over the sphere, it'll zoom into the sphere. Put it away from the sphere, you know, it tends to go towards what you're pointing at instead of just a generalized thing. What you can also do is hit the A, just like in Maya, it's like auto size, and it brings it up here. So here's our sphere, and it is not smooth. It's just these facets. Now, at this time, Modeler 5.6, or just Lightwave 5.6 in general, they created a mode where you could smooth this just like Maya in that, but it had this capability to smooth it live, but you can't save it that way into Layout. It wasn't until later that you could make it stay subdivided without having to freeze it. So, and that, if you want to check that preview, you can hit the tab key, and you see here it creates this neat little, basically like a NURBS surface, but it's not a NURBS. It's you know, just like subdividing live, and it's showing you what it looks like with the little cage. And so we'll use that a lot to see how round our model is. The other thing is if you turn tab and turn it off, and you just get your raw polygons, you can still change that in Lightwave. You can still tell those polygons to smooth. We'll go over here to polygon here, and we'll go to surface, and we can tell this thing to be smoothed here. This is just the default material. I'll see if I show you how to get out here. So we were in objects, and we had to go up to the polygon tab because we're messing with polygons, and we're saying, hey, we want to transform the surface. Turn on the surface. This is basically assigning it. You either are changing the default or you're assigning it a surface. So, and we need to do this because you have to name. It's like materials in Maya. You can't just apply materials in Layout. You have to do the surface assignment in Modeler, and you can modify the material in Layout, but you can't assign materials in Layout the way you can in Modeler for faces or the whole object. So we're going to just create from scratch here as we're changing the surface. I'm going to just call this green underscore sphere, and then we have this. I guess we'll change the color to green, use these sliders, get a good green color out of it, and diffuse up. We'll mess some of this later, and then we have the double-sided. We're not needing to turn on, but we'll turn on the smooth. It's not even letting me turn on smooth here. I'll hit apply. Oh yeah, hit that OK. Smooth. Hit apply. Now you can see here that it is smoothing it. It's still faceted, but it's basically smoothing it bit depending on the angle. So it's trying to do some smoothing even though there's some facets there. It's a better job. It gets rid of seeing the raw normals. Okay, so that's our sphere, and we'll save that. But oh yeah, I want to show you, like, so we have this green sphere. You hit tab and it looks like this. Now we want it to be as smooth as if you were in subdivision mode. So what we'll do is we'll turn off subdivision here, and we'll go down to this on the polygon tab. We'll go down to subdivide, and we're going to use this Metaform, and we're just leaving it at the default here, and I hit OK, and it's smoothed it once. I'm going to do it one more time so we have a really smooth surface here. There we go. Now that'll give us that. Now it looks oval right now. When it renders in Lightwave, it won't look oval, so we'll just trust that. So we'll go save object as, and we'll go to whatever folder you want to use. I have the default user Lightwave folder here, and I will do miscellaneous. I already have these from before, but I'm going to just save them again. So we'll do it from scratch here. Sphere, I'll do sphere 2. Okay, now I'm going to go to a different layer. You see up here we got this layer. If you you can see these buttons here are split in the middle. If we click this one over here, we're in a different layer, and we can't see the first layer. You can see that there's something in the first layer by the little dot above it, but we can preview the previous layer by pressing the bottom portion of these little tabs, and it gives you like a preview. You can't touch it or modify it, but it's showing you basically what the other frame is here and how your other object is, where it's located in relation to this, let's say, new object that you're creating here. So let's go to objects, we'll go to box. We're going to create a little rounded off box here. So I'll start here. You can see it's making this box or making this cube, and we can't really grab the center. And so again, I'd go to the numeric. I'd put this at like, you know, what would we say? Negative 0.5, negative 0.5, negative 0.5, and then 0.5, 0.5, 0.5. And we'll do 3 segments. 3, 3, 3. There we go. Hit make. There's our box. All right, I'm gonna turn off that sphere background there so we can see it. So here's our cube. I want to change that surface, so we'll go back to polygon, hit the surface, and we'll call this the what should it be? We'll call it the red underscore cube. Or should we make it blue? No, we'll make it the red cube. Okay, that'll be our red underscore cube. Pick a color. Just switch these sliders around so we got a good red. Got the smoothing on, hit apply. Okay, the smoothing isn't past 90 degrees, so anything past 90 degrees will still look faceted. That's our cube. If we hit the tab, you can see it does a pretty good round cube because I added 3 spans, but I want to tighten that up by spreading the spans tighter to the edges, so we get a little bit of a tighter smoothness to it when we do the Metaform. So I'm going to go through here in polygon mode. You see down here I'm in point mode. So if I use the mouse right click, I can draw this little lasso, and you can see I can select all the points, and I have these points selected. Or I can drag it around and do it. Or you can use the left click instead of the right click and select, one point it's getting the row behind it, and then use the lasso to deselect. And then we can use these, there are shortcuts here. There is T for move, so I'm in the move tool, let you do that. U is undo. Y is the rotate, so you could do some rotations depending on where your rotation is centered, which we don't really need to do there. Undo, undo. And then H is for scale, but we can scale up from here and there, but we're not needing that. But we'll just use the T for the T on and off to translate. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab the rows. So I'm going to grab these 2 rows through the whole cube here. Hit the H key, try to go to the middle, and we'll scale those guys up and try to keep it somewhat proportionate as a cube here. And then I'll hit the H again to turn it off and deselect everything but the lasso. I'm going to grab the middle spans from the top view. We'll do the same thing. Hit the H key, start it right in the middle, spread them out to the edges, and then we just have to do it one more time for the spans here in the middle here. So we'll do the same thing, and this should tighten up the Metaform so we don't have, it'll round the edges off, but it won't be as round as the one we had before. Okay, it's looking pretty good. Turn everything off here, take the H key, turn it off for scale. So yeah, T is translate, Y is rotate, and H is scale. That's how I switch between T, Y. You can see the little icon here. T, Y, T for move, Y for rotate, H for scale, and tap them again to turn them off. So here's our cube, and now if I hit the tab key, it's rounded, but it's still tight, so it's more of a cube. It's not quite a rounded cube, it's just a nice cube that has nice smoother edges, so we'll do that. And we will do that with the Metaforms. Let's go to Subdivide on the Polygon tab, hit the Metaform once. Does a pretty good job. Let's hit it again. It's looking pretty good. I wonder if that's enough spans. Do we have enough spans? Let's try one more time, see if it gives us a... Alright, yeah, I like this third one here. Doing it 3 times gives us a lot of polygon stuff to work with. Alright, now I'm going to save that one. Even though we're in different layers, you can't save, at this point in Lightwave, you can't save all the layers together in one object. That was another version up from this. So whatever you save, it's just whatever is in the layer that you have selected. That's the object that gets saved. So we'll go back here, File, Save Object As, hit this selection box, go get your directory, and hit this here, Objects, Miscellaneous, Cube 2. Okay, and we'll do another thing here, and now I can show you some polygon, some tricks here. So that's our scale. Those are our two items here. Let's hit display. Use the magnify tool, zoom out a little bit. Hit auto A for auto side, and we'll zoom that out a little bit. And then we got the pan tool here. Lets us move this a little bit. Oops. Move our view around. Not quite as streamlined as the newer Lightwaves, but still pretty neat when it first came out. All right, go back to objects. We're going to create a disk, which is basically a cylinder. You know, you can create a disk, but we'll do a cylinder here. And this is we're going to get a little bit more tricky with the modeling here. So we'll go to numeric. We'll do like 3 segments, and then we'll have the center in 0, 0. Radius we'll do 1, 1, 1. There we go. And we'll just pull the top and bottom out here. And then I'll hit make. Alright, so here's our cylinder. And we'll go to our surface, polygon to name the surface. And we got red and green, so we'll go blue, blue, cylinder. Pick a color for blue, just like we did before. Got smoothing on at 89, hit apply. Alright, so there's our cylinder, but it's not really round. And you know, to tell you the truth, what I want to do now is I want to change this color so it's a little bit brighter. A little bit of a brighter blue so we can see it better. There we go. Yeah, it's a little better. Alright, so we got this nice cylinder, but the tops and the bottoms, if you noticed, they're not quads. And this is a rule when you subdivide, whether it's live or you subdivide freeze. If you hit tab, it's trying to round the outside, but it can't round the tops. So hit tab again. Yeah, see, it's trying to do it. Hit tab, can't do it. So we're going to cut these tops. We're going to bevel them in a way that is almost like the way you would use extrude in the future program to create the spans in the middle. The first thing we're going to do is I'm going to get rid of the bottom, because once I do it to the top, I'm going to just want to mirror it, because I don't want to do it to the top and do it to the bottom. So we'll go down here to polygons now instead of points, and you can see here if I left click drag, you can see I'm selecting these polygons here, like the little normal stick out. You don't see it in this view sadly yet. That was saved for a later Lightwave. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to lasso select the bottom row and the bottom polygon that isn't a quad. We'll delete those. So now we got this. And just for viewing here, I'm going to go to surface. I'm going to modify this to double-sided just so we can see. So you can see it on the inside too. So polygons. See what's going on both sides here. All right. First thing I want to do is I want to bevel this top one so we can create quads instead of this one single polygon that it has on the top. So I selected it, grabbed some, I left-click dragged through the top and the side thing, and then I'm going to just, once that's selected, the next time you left-click drag, it's going to deselect. This is a tricky thing. If you have one selected and you don't want to, you need to select again. You notice how if you drag, left-click drag through when you're on the polygon button here, selection, you got to left-click drag through, it grabs it, and you say you want to add some more, and you go, you can't, and it just gets rid of them. You have to hold shift. So in order to add to your selection, you left-click drag here, and then say you let go, and you go, okay, if you hold shift and click again and drag, then you can add. This is a way of being able to let go and doing like shift, left-click, and then drag, and you can add them again. So that's a way. And then you can use control and left drag to minus from your selection. And that's all we're trying to do is get this top one here. So I'm going to lasso select the top one by right-click dragging. Draws out that lasso. We have this top thing here. What we're going to do is we're going to go to multiply, and we're going to use the bevel. When we open the bevel tool, its inset and shift is 100. I'll just show you the default. You hit that, And let's go over to here. I'm going to change the display so you can see what's going on here. It did this little bevel, and it incent it 100 millimeters, but it also popped it up 100 millimeters. And that probably will work for what we need. But that's the first one. I don't want it to bump up on the second one. What I'm going to do here is I'm going to show you how to change the display a little bit, because right now this is just a default OpenGL. We're going to go over here to display options. It says OpenGL smooth shaded. I got flat shaded, OpenGL sketch. Hit OK. And so now you can see the polygons a little better. It's not showing us the color, it's showing us the background though. I'll just hit this top layer here. But you can see the wireframe. So this is a little better to see what you're doing as far as what the actual polygons are in the 3D view. I don't know if I can change the color of that. It's got OpenGL. Let's see, front face. There's front face ones. That's kind of neat to check it out like that. Solid. Oh yeah, that's pretty good too. It's a pretty good view. All right, so I want to bevel it again, basically like an extrude inward, but I don't want it to pop back up. I've already got a nice rounded out edge, and so I'm going to go back here to multiply, hit bevel, and I'm going to make the inset 100. But I'm going to make this 0. The shift is 0. In fact, I'll probably make the inset 200. I'll do this a couple times. Hit OK. There we go. Got a good inset there, and we're going to do it again. Bevel. Just hit OK. One more time. Bevel. OK. So here's our center. And that's still selected. This one in the middle here is still highlighted. I'm going to hit delete. So you can see through it here. You can see that I can see through the top. What I want to do is, Lightwave didn't have the poke faces like Maya, to be able to take a n-gon and put a point in the center and then draw triangles to the middle. And then you'd be able to delete all the edges, so every other edge, so you could have quads. And what we're going to do here, go into display, or hit auto size, is I'm going to build it from scratch using the old tools. So we'll go to polygon, tab at the top, we'll go to the points. I'm going to put a point right here. And you can see it's not made it yet. Let's put it here, and so I have to move this up to the top where I want it to be, right here, and then we'll hit the make button. It drops us a point. Now what we want to do is go down here to our lower left where the polygons are, switch to point mode. We're going to deselect this guy first. I'm going to left drag over that one and then go over these 3, and that gives us a triangle that's basically a quad, and this will subdivide smoother. So then we have, and I hit P for polygon. So now I've got, you can see it's making this. And we're just going to go through and do that over and over again. We'll go middle, 1, 2, shift here. I deselected it, so now I have to add to it a shift, left click, drag, 1, 2, 3, hit P, left click, drag, 1, 2, 3, 4. So I'm going to just work my way around this to try to do this. Hit P, 1, and I'm doing it clockwise. Sometimes it'll flip the polygon. If the polygon comes out wrong, 1, 2, 3, and they're flipped, I'll show you how to flip them by selecting them and hitting the F key. And we'll see if I'm doing it right after I switch the OpenGL mode back. So this is a trick that you normally have in Maya. You can do really quick with the poke faces, even back in this early era. Is that one made? Okay, let's go back to our display. Options, go from solid to smooth. What's this here? Yeah, so I didn't have that last one. See, it's still there, but I have it. I have those selected. Hit P. Okay, so now I've created that, and if we hit the tab key, yeah, it smooths really nice, because all these are quads. Even these are quads in the middle here, and they're stretching out really nice. So we did the top. We didn't want to do it again for the bottom, and so we're going to just mirror the top, and then we'll merge the points. So I'm going to zoom out using the magnify here. Go in here and zoom out a little ways, and then we'll use the pan. Doesn't have a quick key. And we'll go over here to multiply, the multiply tab, and we'll use the mirror. And we'll draw a little mirror out. You can draw it like this way or this way. If you drag up and down, it's basically a horizontal mirror. If you drag left and right to to a certain degree, it's a vertical mirror. So I'm going to get underneath it here, and we'll want that to be copied, and we'll say make, and there it goes. It gives us our bottom, and we're going to just drag that. We're going to grab all the polygons with a deselect this guy here, all those. I'm going to lasso with right click, drag around the bottom, hit auto size, and then we're going to I do want to get closer, see, magnify, get in here a little bit closer, and we'll then turn that off and hit the T for the move. Put this guy up here. Or no, actually what we'll do, let's undo that. Since we know those are perfectly aligned, what we want to do is we'll do it with the points. So I'm going to auto size this really quick again, turn off the move, and deselect everything. I'm just going to get the points from these two rows, since those are really the only ones we need to move. Hit auto size, let's see, magnify, get this in here, and use the H tool as a scale, and we'll see if I can just squeeze these guys down here. What I might be able to do is use the numeric to make it better. So I'll hit undo, and we'll go to modify, stretch, numeric. Yeah, so what we're going to do is we're going to use that numeric tool. X is going to stay 100, Y is going to stay 0, Z is going to stay 0. We'll hit OK, and there they are. Now they're lined up. They're not attached yet though, so what I'm going to do is hit T, turn that off, and deselect everything, and then we're going to go to the Polygon tab, and we're going to, well, let's see if I can grab all these guys here, and we want to merge these guys. What do we want to do here? Tool, modify, or is it display? Tools, oh here we are, in the Tools tab for points, now there's this merge. So under the Tools tab with all these selected, although I don't even think it matters if we have them selected because it's just going to look for distances. So we'll go up here to merge. It brings up this. We're going to do a fractional absolute. I'm going to say by 1 millimeter, and we'll hit OK, and it says 24 points eliminated, which is the exact amount that we have. And now if I try to move these polygons, it should be dragging the rest. Yeah, so we grabbed them. Now they're all attached. And let's see. We'll hit auto size here, and there's our object. Okay, and that's how it looks, tabbed and pre-NURBed, preview NURBed. But we're going to subdivide it. Go to Polygon tab, subdivide. You do Metaform a couple times. That's pretty once. Subdivide Metaform twice. Looks good. Looks good. And there's a nice smooth cylinder. Okay, let's save this off. Save object as. Same routine as before. Go down to my user Lightwave folder. Go into objects. And we will jump over to layout. Lightwave objects, miscellaneous. Do cylinder 2. And then, oh yeah, we have to create a couple more things. We need a floor plane for our objects. So let's shift select these guys so I can see everything. We'll go objects. I'm just going to create a box, create a floor plane here. It's already making it 3 by 3, which is fine, and it's right in the center here. It isn't actually in the center. Let's go numeric. Alright, and then I will call, we'll hit make. So there's that. And we're going to go polygon. I don't need to tab it yet. Surface, we'll call this floor. Oops, cancel, just say floor, just a real basic gray color's fine. I'll do 180, tab 180, and then it doesn't need to be, oh, I could leave it on double-sided and smooth. Hit apply. Okay, there's our floor. Save object as, and I need a little reflector card because the lights in Lightwave back in this era do not show up in reflections, so we're going to just like soft image, we're going to create a reflector card so we can see the light look physically represented in the reflection. All right, and then we just need one more smaller to represent our light card. Object make, turn out the box there, polygon, name the surface, call this light card. And this will be pure white. Although I'll probably change that from diffuse to luminosity. Let's see, apply, and then save object as user Lightwave objects miscellaneous. I'm sure I have a light card in here already. We'll just make a separate one. Had to test all this out to remind myself how to do it. All right, now let's jump over into Lightwave itself. So we'll minimize that, and we'll open up the Lightwave software here. Okay, here's Lightwave. Okay. This is the layout for Lightwave 3D. This is basically your sound stage, your virtual light and sound stage here. When you open it up, you have this 3/4 view of a grid. There's a camera here and a little directional light here. Like a modeler, it doesn't have a lot going on. It's an early, it's an early version of the application. There's not a ton going on, but there's enough for you to do a lot of neat things with it here. So you have the little animation here. It's set first frame, last frame down to 1 in 60. You have some items. You can see the play and rewind. You got a little preview thing here. Create key, delete key. You have items that are selected. A list here, and there's a little, just like in Modeler, these like kind of tabs or buttons that tab through. So you can hit objects. It brings up. But they aren't tabs. These brings up, attribute windows basically. So with objects pressed, you can load and save objects and apply displacement maps or morph targets, do some things with appearances. If we go to surfaces, this is our, materials that we made when we named them. Images are for texture maps. Lights, for all the lights in the scene, you can set your light attributes. Right here it's a distant light. We'll probably change this to an area light. And then you turn on shadows and whatever you need here. And then here's the camera. Camera is, how is the resolution, how much anti-aliasing, motion blur, depth of field, these kind of things are in the camera. There's some effects for glowing and fog and compositing. Options to look at the view, how the view looks. These are pretty good for default. And then there's network for network rendering, which we're not going to do. So there's that, and then you just have these controls here that are real generic across the board for moving, editing, whether you're editing objects, bones, lights, or cameras, and whether you're moving or rotating an object or scaling an object. And then there's the numeric, and there's some plugins here. So let's go, what we need to do first is load objects into Layout, and then we'll get into some quick keys, and we'll start laying out a scene here. So let's go to the Objects tab. We'll go Load Object. We'll open up thing. We have to go, thankfully you don't have to go to the root level here. When you load up Layout, it gives you the default user Lightwave, so it's quicker. So we'll go to Objects, Miscellaneous, and we'll load up our floor. Got floor 2. Okay, there's our floor. And it looks like if I click it, it's not exactly centered here, but it'll work. And now we're in move mode. So we're in objects, move mode. So without pressing anything, I can left click, and you can see I'm moving this guy along the X and the Z just by dragging like this. And you go, well, I want to move it on Y. You can't move it with the left click. You have to use the right click, and then you can move it off, up and down on the Y plane. So the right click when you're in move mode goes in Y, and the left click is going in Z and X. I'm going to use the numeric, and we're going to move it back to its 0 default position. So that's where I want it to be, but we're going to scale it up quite a bit. I'm going to scale this up and have a big floor here. And then I'm going to go to move. I don't know if the quick keys, yeah, the hotkeys don't work here. So you can't use the T, Y, and H like you do in Modeler. You just have to click these buttons. They have some shortcuts here for objects, bones, lights, and camera, but the move and the rotate and the size don't have shortcuts. I imagine maybe you can set them. You might be able to set them, but we'll just set this guy here. One thing I'm curious about is if I'm not seeing polygons. Oh no, okay, that's fine. So I'm going to rotate, reset the rotation there. And let's see. Let's close this panel for this object here. Have the light here, and I'm going to go to the camera view. Now, you'll see here, up here in the upper right, there's move, rotate, and zoom. This is so you can move the perspective view, because you're not in your camera yet. This is up. This tab here tells you what view you're in, and you default in the perspective view. So I'm going to go over here to the move, and we're going to basically like we did with the item. You left click will do Y and Z. And we can see right now that ground plane is not on the ground. I'm going to hit the rotate here. It is not on the grid. And so I want to fix that. So it is on the grid. So I'm going to zoom out, or I'm going to move back here, move back a little bit. And we're going to put this object, we're on the floor. Move, I want to move, try to move this up here so that it's more on the ground. Getting closer, I'll put the ground bias here and we'll move it up. Right click to move it up on Y. Alright, that's better. Now it's on the ground plane. If I had to put it on the ground plane in Modeler, be a little bit easier to see. The zoom is like when you change the lens. I don't want to, you can do that. It's just like a soft image does this too. Not really doing a dolly. Or a track. I forget what it is when you push the camera in. But, alright, there's our floor. Let's see if I object move. I'm going to move that forward here. So we're here. Put it on the ground and move the view. And we'll start bringing our other objects in here. Object, load object, and we'll bring that. Let's bring in our items here. So we have our cube. Let's see what our cube looks like. There's our cube. That looks pretty good. I'll rotate our view and see where it is. It's kind of probably stuck in the middle. So right click, move. You can see now that I have 2 items. Down here in this list, there's selected items. So, and you can do this with the objects panel too. Since the objects panel is open, I'll close it. Turn on objects. We have the cube selected, and we can switch over to the floor. We can switch over to the cube. So it's kind of item selected, keeps the attributes. Let's put this up on the floor. So move with the move tool on, right clicking lets us move up on Y. We'll put it here. Now I don't feel like I'm looking at a wireframe mode, so we got to change the display. So let's go to layout view graphics. Let's go OpenGL. There we go. Now we can see. But I wonder if I don't know if there's a way to options layout view. Is there a way to show? It's got OpenGL textures. Maybe we should try to put texture on that floor. It doesn't give me a wireframe version, does it? Like it does in Modeler, it doesn't. Okay, so we're going to trust that. There's our cube. Let's load up open a panel again, load objects, miscellaneous, cylinder 2, our little blue cylinder. Ooh, it's pretty big. I'll probably have to scale that down. Using the right click with the move tool on, I'm going to move it up here, but I'm going to move it over to size. I'm not going to stretch it. I'm going to scale it down so it's a little bit more to the size of the cube. And I'm going to squash it. I'm going to do stretch. I'm going to turn off the X and the Z. I'm going to stretch it on the Y using the right click here. So we got a little bit of that. Move, right click to move it on Y. So we can push it into the ground here. We'll try to get it. So up here on the upper right, I'm going to rotate the view just to see if it's stuck through the floor at all. Alright, Really clunky early era stuff. Okay, using the left click instead of the right click. I'll move that over. You can click on the objects too. You don't have to use the list here. I can click on that cube and move it, and then hit the rotate. I'm going to do, see that's heading HPB, so if I turn these two off, yeah, maybe roll the cube a little bit more towards the light. Click that guy, move it over here, and we'll try to reposition. We'll position our camera a little bit. I'm just trying to get some layout here. And let's open objects, load object. We need our couple more items here. We need the sphere, our green sphere, and we'll move that over. And what do we have? Move that up. I want to scale it down. Yeah. Maybe not that far down. So we've got a nice little trio of colorful items. Move our view down to see what we have. Sticking through the floor, right click to move it up until we're above the floor. There we go. So there we go. We got some cool items to color in here to try to shade. Click that guy. That's pretty neat. Now what we have to do, I mean, let's try a test first. We'll just do a basic test with this light here. We got to click this light. It's a directional light. And we'll just do a generic render here. So let's go into lights and see what it's set up to do. It says it's a distant light. Shadow tape is on ray trace. Close the panel. We'll go to camera. There's not any anti-aliasing. We'll do that later. It's basically 640 by 480, and we'll just do a little test render. So I'll go to render. There's this little button here in the lower right. Hit the render key. It says do realistic. These are the options here: shadows, reflections, refractions. So I'm going to turn on shadows, and we'll turn on reflections in a little bit here. We don't show the rendering progress, display a full-size window, and we're just going to render one. So I'll hit begin rendering, and it looks crazy because that isn't the view. That's the camera. The camera's underneath the floor, so we have to close this. So that is not showing us what we're looking at like you'd see in Maya. So we have to go over here to perspective view, go to camera, and now we can see what our camera sees. The camera's under the floor. So now we switch from lights or objects over to camera up here in our edit. So camera, remove. If you use the left click, you're going on Z and X like all the things before. And if you have the right click, you go up and down on Y. So now we're starting to look at our scene here. And you can see there's these little lines that tell you that this is probably, 640 by 480, that's the proportion of it. So I'm going to arrange my camera now, go over here, and hit rotate, and try to give us a little bit more of a 3/4 view. Move, push in, and then right click, left click to move this way, right click to move down, or rotate, and kind of aim it down at our items. And we want to change our camera. Let's go to camera, let's do a custom size, and we want, let's do like a 1280 by 720, more of a HD frame here. All right, leave this anti-aliasing off, and we'll just see what it draws. Okay, so what we have here is this light just aimed that way with some hard shadows probably. So we'll hit render, begin rendering, and there's a very basic image out of old Lightwave. We're going to try to make this look fancier than that though. So here's our very generic, non-anti-aliased, diffuse slit with very hard shadows in Lightwave. And we're going to try to make this prettier. We'll close this off, and we need to change some things to make this look a little bit more photoreal. First off is we don't like the distant light because it's not going to give us a nice shadow. So we're going to go to the light, we're going to hit lights, and this Lightwave was the first, I think it was the first one, maybe it was Lightwave 5. I don't remember it being in 4, but there are area lights here, and they were very expensive when they first released, but because we're using an SGI machine, it's not going to be so bad. And you can see it makes the little square. I'm going to back it off here, and I'm going to right click to move it up, and I'll rotate a little bit and size it up. The bigger it is, the softer the shadows will be. Alright, that looks pretty good, and now we'll try to draw again. Hit render, begin rendering, And take a little bit longer now because it's drawing some nice soft shadows. But it doesn't, it gets through it pretty quick. Let's see here. It's a little bit bright in its setting. And you'll notice that there is almost like GI is turned on here. It's not a perfectly black. That's because, like in Softimage 3D, the early version, there is a default ambience, which is set at a pretty decent level to make it look like there's balanced light. And I'd set that down from where it is. But you can see here, our shadows are soft. Make a little bit more of a pleasing photoreal images with the area light that has soft shadows. So it's a little bit messy though, because we have an anti-aliasing, and you can see the bright spot here. We're blowing it out, so we're going to take that down. So we'll go to our light, hit abort. We're not going to smooth out that render until we get where we need. We're not going to mess with the anti-aliasing. So light, I'm going to change that light intensity down. Just put it down to like, let's try 35. And then close. And here's our ambient intensity. So I'm going to turn this down to like from 25. I'm going to turn it down to 10. We'll probably even go lower than that. This is a good start. And then with the camera, I'm going to take us down by half. We're going to go, what would it be? 1280 by 720 would be 640. 640 by, what is half of 720 here? Maybe 640 by 360. Yeah. So now we're getting a little bit smaller, and we want it to draw faster since we're previewing. Hit camera, okay, that's fine. Hit render down here in the lower left, begin rendering. See if our light levels are a little bit better to deal with here. Maybe I should brighten it back up, but yeah, looking a little bit more dramatic. And ambient still generally lighting the whole scene, but that is a little bit more appealing. Let's do, probably turn that, let's go back to the light. I'm going to turn the ambient light down to like 3.5, and we'll turn the intensity up a little bit, 45, and that's pretty good. Now let's go to, now let's change the surface, because what we want to do is we want these things to reflect each other. So that's under surfaces, next to the object thing up here. You can hit surfaces, and it brings up our surface panel. And this is, it has a little preview sample here, depending on which one you're at. So here's all our materials. You got floor, red cube, blue cylinder, and green sphere. Let's start with the green sphere. Hit render. You can see it's got that, which we've already seen. And all we want it to do is we want to do two things. There's Fresnel, because I don't know how to apply a gradient based on camera angle in Lightwave this early, like you can do in Maya. So we'll just do the reflectivity at 15% here. I'm going to change the spec level at all. And we're going to go up to advanced options, and there's this shader plugin called Fast Fresnel. We're just going to turn that on. It gives us more of a glance angle reflection. And we'll do the same thing for the blue cylinder. Reflectivity at 15. Advanced options, Fast Fresnel. Oops, open the surfaces again. So you got green spheres, already got it. Blue cylinder has it. Red cube, same thing. Reflectivity at 15%. It's like our facing reflectivity, and then shader, Fast Fresnel. Close. All right, now let's take a look at that first. Let's do render. Maybe I'll push the camera in. So I'm gonna hit the camera. Hit the move. I kind of want to get a little bit closer in on our look here and rotate this in so we can get the light. There we go. And then what I'm going to do now is I'm going to save this scene. Save the scene as, you don't want to lose it, scenes. And we'll call this basic setup 2. And what it's doing is it's like remembering what objects you have loaded. So these objects are, the scene file is remembering what objects you have loaded, what surfaces you have on the objects, based on what's saved in the object. So not only are we saving the scene, we're saving the scene to remember camera position, light position, and object position, and any tertiary stuff that you've changed, like animation and whatnot. So we're saving that, but now that we've changed these surfaces, if we load this up without saving on our objects, it'll just bring them in like they were in Modeler. And now that we've changed stuff in Layout, we want to go to the objects, and there's a button here called Save All Objects, and it will save the surface settings that we've done into these objects. So when you load Lightwave again, if you load this scene, it'll remember the shader settings we have on it. And you have to do that, otherwise, if you don't save your objects with changes you made to shaders here, you won't get them back. So we'll hit Save All Objects, yep, close. Now we've got objects and scene saved. We'll go down here to render and take a look at what we made with the Fresnel. It's looking pretty good. Mm-hmm. 640 by 360. And you can see this is round, like even though the display in, you know, it looks oval here, you can see here at the pixel ratio, those are all correct. And this is something that used to happen in Lightwave, and they corrected it later. I forget, it was Lightwave 5.65 or if it was Lightwave 6, but they had fixed all the OpenGL so they didn't stretch like that. But at least the renders look good. Okay, so the first thing is we have a little something happening here because this is an area light and there's a little fast Fresnel spec hit. We don't see the reflection of the area light, and that's why we made the, it has a little bit of a CGI feel. And we also turned on reflection, but we don't see reflection. So let's do that first. Let's close this guy, and let's get our reflections going. Hit abort, and that's because we need to turn on that in the, we've got realistic in the render panel, but we need into camera. Is it camera or lights? No, under render, we have to turn on under the render panel here. There's this trace reflections, and so now we have that. So now if I turn on begin rendering, we'll do one more render here. And this should give us a solid reflection pass, where it's actually ray tracing the reflections, so it takes a little bit longer. And there's our render. Pretty nice reflections there. They seem a little bit hot, but it could be the ambient level still too high. I'll pull that ambience down a little bit further, and maybe the reflections down slightly so the Fresnel does a little bit more work. Let's go back to our light panel. Oh, that ambience down pretty low. Let's see here, I'll put it down to 2.5. Close, and then let's check the surface. Okay, here's our surface panel. I'm going to turn the reflectivity down to like 10 on each one here, because I just want to see the Fresnel doing a little bit more work than the reflection, the forward reflection, so I can see more of a Fresnel effect. So I'm taking the reflectivity down to 10%. We'll close that. And then let's get a reflector card, because you can see that we didn't have the, well, let's look at it first before we put the reflector card in, because we don't have that. Okay, that's looking better. Now it's a little bit more, the Fresnel effect's doing a little bit more work here than it was. Now all we need is, we just have this light, but there's nothing that seems like it's sourcing the light, so we want to put that highlight as if there is a big chimera reflector light to light our product or whatever we're doing, to give it a little bit more tangibility. And that ambient still feels a little hot. What's amazing is that may be because of the SGI display being up of 1.6 or 8 gamma. So I'm going to take this down to 1 just to see how dark I can get. It's like really tapers off right there at the last percentage. And I'm wondering if, let me see here, if we can find an image. I'm going to load an image here and see if I can get something in here. Oops, I want to see if I can find, I don't know if this is able to load. Let's see here, users, or Maya in here? I want to find images. that, yeah, see here, I've got the wood plank. Let's see if this loads. Yeah, I can't load this image here. This is too big for Lightwave. I wanted to put a wood texture on the floor, but I think those are too massive, those JPEGs, for this time. But perhaps, oh, I can do a procedural texture on it. So let's go to Objects, Floor, before I load the other thing up, and then we'll go Surface. Let's go over to the floor, and there is a surface color, and I want to hit T for texture. It brings up this planar image map, which we don't have loaded anything yet, but there is should be a checkerboard. Yeah, here we go, checkerboard. Hit render. Oh my goodness. Let's see, it doesn't showing up here. Let's see. If I do white, let's see here. All right. Does this work? No. Floor. Let's see here. Okay, it looks like it's trying to do something here. Let me turn this down then. Maybe it just needed that texture reference object here. Okay, there we go. Use texture. Maybe this will give us I'll do a smaller one here. Super low. Res. Yeah, I'll do a small. I just want to see how the checker turns out. Render, begin rendering. Okay, so I adjusted. I played with the checkerboard to size it down. So I have this more, and I changed the black a little bit. That's here. You go here. You set the texture size. You set them to 5 centimeters, and I change the texture color off black to 5. So I get this instead of that, and it makes the overall look really nice here. So let's get that. So I have that, but let's add the reflector card here. So miscellaneous, light card 2, and then we'll have to set up that. So with our light card, where is that little guy? It's probably below the floor, right? Take the perspective view. I'm going from camera view to perspective view, so I can move back here and try to find it under the floor, right? Yeah, it's right there, under the floor, okay. So I've got the light card selected. I'm in move, right click to move it up, and then try to put it, this is gonna be a little tricky because the pivot's not right on. And what I'm gonna do this is actually good to show you, because see, if I rotate, see that little dot there, that's the rotate pivot. It's not in the middle. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna leave that there. I'm gonna go back over to Modeler, and we can see here that that's not centered. Forget if there is a way to center easily. I remember there was a Lightwave that was like you could press a button and it would center all the points here, or it would center your object, but I don't see it in this version. Yeah, display. Don't see a center tool. Drill, Boolean, custom, merge. Yeah, so we're just going to have to manually do this here. We're going to grab these points and hit T. I'm going to try to put it right up on here. So over there, and then we'll do another save file, save object as. And you'll see here that when I reload it now, that it will update the object. And then Lightwave Layout. So miscellaneous. Go down here to light card 2. Okay, I'm saving over that. Yep. Go ahead and go back here to the layout, and we have that. And I'm going to just go to objects, and I'm going to say, oh, there's no reload here, is there? I'm going to replace object. So now it should, using the same one, light card 2. There we go. Now, see the pivot's in the middle. So yeah, you got to pay attention to that pivot. This is one of the tough things about using Lightwave versus the other apps, is that because you have a separate modeler, you have to do some planning before time to get it right. All right, so this is double-sided. It needs to be a light card. I don't want to block the light. So we'll go to the surfaces here, and we're going to turn off the diffuse completely. We'll turn the luminosity all the way up. And it's basically like a light card now. We don't want to block the light or it'll cast a shadow, so we'll move it behind the light. And one thing we could do, so we could probably, maybe the light coordinates are, let's see here, if I go to move, light position says it's -3 to 0.55. Let's see if we can do that with this here. So we've got that. Let's see if I click this guy as an item. Not quite like the attribute editor or channel box in Lightwave, or in Maya. Let's see here. So I'm just going to try to line it up by eye here. Pitch bank. I use the H only to, oh no, that's the heading. Pitch, yeah. Move that, and then we'll scale it up, and we'll rotate our view over here. Try to make it similar here. Let's move it over there. And we'll stretch it a little bit. Which way can I stretch it? Yeah. Alright, that's good. That's pretty cool. And then just kind of make it sit in the same space here and do the job. Alright, now we'll go from perspective to the camera view. And let's back that off. So we're in cameras, move. I'm going to move this back a little bit to catch that light. Rotate us over a little bit more. So you can kind of see our light card doing its work. And we're objects. I'm going to save all objects again. And we're going to save the scene. And we should have a pretty neat looking render now. And then we'll make it big. Yeah, there you go. So now you actually have the, oh, this is interesting. It's putting some sort of gamma on the display here is actually brighter than it should be. This is correct. This is actually adding some sort of post gamma, which I'm not exactly sure why. But that's what our image should look like, not that cloudy one. Abort. Let me see what that is here. Render panel. Is there some sort of post? Render display full size. It's definitely doing something different there. I'll have to output it and check it in Photoshop, I guess. Okay, so let's do some anti-aliasing. We'll make this bigger. So let's go to the camera. Use our custom size here, and we'll do 1280 by 720. And we'll turn anti-aliasing up. And medium, this is going to be a bit. And let's see, by 720. Close. Now we got a bigger frame. Oh yeah, see, now it's HD. So let's move the camera in a little bit more here. Rotate. And save scene. Yep. And let's see what the render looks like. Actually, what I'm going to do is we'll try to just save the, we'll just save this image here. So I'll go 24-bit Targa. I'll put file name. I guess it's by the frame. So I've made this a Targa, and we'll hit this, and we'll try to find a spot for it here. I guess we'll put it in images, and hit OK. And let's see here. Yeah. So now I have that first frame, last frame. We're just doing one frame here. So don't need anything else. Okay, let me start that render. Okay, there's our render. It's still up in gamma, but it does look pretty good. Let's see. I saved out an image so we can check it in Photoshop to see if the gamma is any better in Photoshop. But there you go. It has this light card that's being reflected. It's got a little bit of a Fresnel, got a texture, and some soft shadows, which help it feel a little bit more tangible than the flat render that we had at the beginning. Trying to make it look more like a modern linear workflow lighting in the old versions of the software. Let's see, let's check that if we can see if we can load that image up here that I saved out and see if it shows up a little better without all the gamma applied to it. This is a Photoshop 3.01. It is hardware accelerated on the SGI. That's pretty neat. Where do we put this actually? I wonder where I saved everything. I have to go back to figure out where I put that. Here, let's go down to user here. It's in Lightwave maybe? Yeah, let's try this. Images? There, is that it? Maybe that's it. There it is. Alright, that isn't. That is not gamma corrected, but it has some chatter in it. I don't know if that's a Photoshop display bug or whatnot, but at least you can see it here without the gamma applied to it. And that's Lightwave for today. That's our first just generic tutorial on old Irix Lightwave 3D version 5.6. Thanks for tuning in. Bye.